So my name is Quentin Le Celler. So I'm a Grin contributor and also a developer at BlockCypher, where we developed Grin Mint, which is a Grin mining pool. So if you have any question about that, you can ask me later. So today we are going to talk about, it's going to be a little bit technical talk. It will be about Dandelion. So Dandelion is a privacy-preserving transaction aggregation and propagation system in Grin. So we will start with really like the basics. So what is Grin? Like not what is Grin, but like what are Grin transaction? What is the Grin blockchain? What are the open problems? And then we will talk about like Dandelion, like the idea of Dandelion, what it does, and what kind of issue it solves. And then we will see how we managed to put to merge Grin and Dandelion to have this transaction aggregation system. Okay, so let's talk about Grin. So Grin transactions are really simple compared to Bitcoin transaction. So in Bitcoin transaction, like you have those outputs, and you need to there is a script with each output, and you need to verify some condition, like the stack has to be true, so you can spend the outputs. So in Grin, it's really simple. It's like basically just numbers. So it's basically public keys. So there is no script. So basically, Grin transactions are scriptless. But you will see that we can still do something, like with the talk from Jasper. We can still do things like atomic swaps. So Grin transactions are made of three parts. So there is the input, which runs to all outputs. There is the outputs, which are confidential transactions, meaning that you cannot see the recipient or the amounts. There is a range push attached to each. And there is a kernel, which is the difference between output and input plus C plus signatures. So how do you verify a Grin transaction or member-member transaction? You do two things. You do like you check if the person spending an output does own the private key, and then you check something like which is called the verification of zero sums. So basically, you take the outputs minus input, which must be equal to kernel. And so this is why we can do things like that. So here in this example, we have two transactions. So there is TX1 with two inputs and two outputs and a kernel, and TX2 with two inputs, one output, and a kernel. You can see that TX2 uses the same output as TX1, so it spans the blue outputs. And so basically, you check that TX1, when you do output minus input, it's equal kernel, and do the same for the second one. But you can also do like some kind of aggregation. You can join them together, and you can still validate the equation, basically output minus input equal kernels, for the sum of kernel here. And you can do something more. You can do what we call cut-through. So basically, you remove the spent outputs. And when you remove the spent outputs, you remove them from both sides of the equation. So it means like this kind of transaction is still valid. And it's the same. So it gives you some perks. So mainly, in that case, if Alice sends Grins to Bob and Bob sends Grins to Carol, you'll be able to remove the intermediaries with that. And basically, miners will do this all the time. So miners have a mempool of transactions. So they will take all the transactions, make a big aggregated transaction, do the cut-through, so remove the spent outputs if possible, and submit the big transaction as a block. So that's why in this example where you see the blockchain, every block is a transaction. But this also means that miners are able to see the transaction graph. Because if they're able to receive each individual transaction, you can see the transaction graph. And this is one of the reasons where you can sync when you launch Grin on your laptop. It's really fast to sync, because instead of downloading each block just like in Bitcoin and verifying each transaction, you will receive just the state of the blockchain, where all the spent outputs are removed. It looks like this. And finally, we are just going to go back on scaling Beacon 2016. So at the time there was 3 open problems. The first one was smaller range proof, because at that time the range proofs were really big. There were no things called bulletproof, which appeared later by Benedict Bunce. So the same guy as before. And third one was quantum resistance, which can be fixed by switch commitment, by chimorphing. And the second one was a peer-to-peer protocol that can handle transaction merging. And this is the subject of this talk. Okay, so now keep in mind the way that we can take 2 transactions, aggregate them, and broadcast them. And we are going to talk about just like Dandelion from a really high-level perspective. So Dandelion is actually a flower like that. So the idea behind Dandelion is that you can spy. It's really easy to spy on the Bitcoin network. So you can connect to all the nodes and basically link transaction. So you can say, oh, this guy sent a transaction. So you can say, I think this guy is the sender of this transaction. So you can link IP with transaction. And even you can link IP with Bitcoin addresses, which is really bad for privacy. So Dandelion tried to fix this. So it's defined as a simple networking policy to improve the anonymity in a peer-to-peer network. And it was created by Julia Fanti, Shalish Bogia, Pramal Vidanath from the University of Illinois. And there was a BIP submitted a year ago. So what is exactly Dandelion? So what you want to do, you want to hide the original sender of a transaction. So you will see here there is 2 phases. So the node on the left tries to send a transaction to the network. But instead of spreading the transaction normally, like send it to all the peers, it will just send it to one peer. This is called the anonymity phase. So basically you will send transaction to only one peer, and this peer is called the Dandelion relay. It's not a random peer. So at this point the transaction is really like a stealth transaction. It's not like a regular transaction. So we call it a stem transaction. So there is like a random number of hops, and at the end, some nodes, we say, okay, that's it. I'm going to spread this transaction in the network. So this transaction will pass from stem transaction to regular transaction. And like in the end, all the network will see the transaction. But if someone is listening to the network, he will not be able to see that this node on the left was the first sender of the transaction. Okay, so you might have heard some words that I use here, and I just need you to understand like these 5 words, basically. The first one is the stem transaction. It's a transaction during the anonymity phase. It's a really like different transaction than the one at the end. The second one is a stem memory pool. So you don't want to store the stem transaction in the same memory pool as a regular transaction. And there is something called the Dandelion relay. So it's a peer you choose to send the transaction as stem. You will see why you need to update this peer every X minutes. And we use 2 really short verbs, just to speak like to be easier. Is to broadcast to stem is to broadcast to the Dandelion relay only, and to fluff is to broadcast to all the peer normally. Okay. So now that we have this vocabulary in place, I can start you explaining step by step what is happening here. So for example, A wants to send a transaction using Dandelion. So what A will do, he will send a stem transaction to his Dandelion relay. In that case, it's B. So A will send a stem transaction to B. And what B will do? B will just throw a coin, do a coin flip, and say, okay, if it's head, I'm going to send it only to my Dandelion relay, and if it's tail, I'm going to broadcast it on the network. It's like the only two cases on Dandelion. And in that case, if it's tail, if it's head, sorry, if it's head, C will do the same. C receives the stem transaction and will do a conflip and say, okay, I'm going to stem it or fluff it. And there is also a third case where, for example, B don't want to play by the rule. So A sends the transaction to B for this one, and B say, okay, no, I'm not going to broadcast this transaction. I don't like Dandelion, whatever. And basically, at this point, every time a node sends a stem transaction, it will start a timer, which we call the embargo timer. So in that case, A sends the stem transaction to B, and he waits. He waits like a few minutes. And if after like, let's say 5 minutes, he doesn't receive the transaction, he says, okay, someone is not playing by the rules, so I'm going to broadcast this transaction regularly. And this is like the worst case that can happen with Dandelion. You fall back on the original propagation system, which is not that bad. Okay, so with Dandelion, there is three basically parameters. First one is the Dandelion probability, because you're not going to do a conflip. Because if it was a conflip, it would be like 50% of the time, you will say, okay, stem it or fluff it. And it will be like really, really short pass. So it will be like, on average, only 2 hops before propagation. So you want something higher than that. So let's say, by default in Grin, it's 90%. So 90% of the time you receive a stem transaction, you will stem it. And 10% of the time you will fluff it. There is also a timer, because you need to change your Dandelion relay regularly, because if it's always the same, then somebody can spy on you. And as I told you, the embargo timer, which is by default 3 minutes. Okay. So now we are going to see how we managed to implement Dandelion in Grin and how we fixed the transaction aggregation problem. So first we started by really like implementing the basic Dandelion in Grin. So this was done in February, yes, and it's like it was in the testnet 2 release. It's like really the basic Dandelion, like all the stem fluff logic, but no aggregation. And then we thought like maybe we can leverage the Dandelion protocol to aggregate transaction. But it's a hard problem because aggregation in the peer-to-peer protocol is really hard because there is no consensus on the content of the memory pool. And as I said before, you want miners to be able to find the transaction graph. And so like the real question, like, can we use the Dandelion protocol to aggregate transaction in Grin? And yes, we can. So what we can do, we can start aggregating during the stem phase, also called the anonymity phase. And we can stop aggregation when we fluff it. And we need to introduce some concept here, like the concept of patience. So every time a node receives a stem transaction, it will wait. Like a few minutes to receive more stem transaction to make a bigger one at the end. Because if you do it directly, you will not aggregate any transaction. But if we allow people to do that on Grin, people can also take transaction from the memory pool, do some kind of weird aggregation, like say, okay, I'm going to take this transaction from the memory pool, I'm going to create one with very low fee, I'm going to broadcast it. And this won't work. It's like create like a major denial of service on Grin transaction. So we had to implement like some kind of de-aggregation mechanisms every time we receive like an aggregated transaction. And finally, so a month later, Nchurch made like the full implementation of transaction aggregation in Grin, which pull request 1067. and it's since testnet 2. And so you might be wondering, like, okay, what is happening with this aggregation? I have no idea. So I'm going to do like step by step, just as before. Okay, so we start with A, send a stem transaction to B, just as before. But here, instead of doing a coin flip directly, B will wait. B will wait for the for a patience timer for, let's say, a few minutes. And during this period of time, it will receive a stem transaction from G. So like here, you might notice that B is the Dandelion relay of A and of G. And so, at the end of this timer, B will do a coin flip, but for each transaction. And we'll say, okay, so the transaction from A, am I going to fluff it or stem it? Do a coin flip and mark it to stem or to fluff. And same for the one coming from G, to stem or to fluff. And so in the end, like you broadcast all the to stem takes to your Dandelion relay, which make a big transaction like passing through, and all the to fluff transaction to all your peers. So going back to the previous example, if the transaction from A and G was marked as to stem, you will broadcast a big transaction to, let's say, C, which is the Dandelion relay of B. Yeah. So it's like some kind of snowball effect. You see, like we start with a really small transaction, and you keep growing. And if you want to, so sometimes you don't want to wait like a few minutes for your transaction. But there is like always a plan. In Grin, you can disable Dandelion. There is like a flag. You can just fluff it from the beginning. It's just a regular transaction, which can be confirmed in a few minutes. So just to finish this, there is some current challenge and future work. So right now it's really hard to simulate a whole network of like transaction, Dandelion relay, all of that. It's really hard to quantify. And also it's, we would like to know how many natural aggregation happens on the network. Like when you send a Dandelion transaction, how many of them are actually aggregated? Yes. Right now it's really hard to know. So we'll have to do some more tests. And also we would like to test our parameters. Because right now we choose like 90% Dandelion probability, like 3 minutes embargo timer, but we don't know if it's some good value. It's just guessing. Okay, that's it. Here's some reference, and if you have any question.
Would it make sense for an originator of a transaction to say, essentially, I don't care how long this takes, but I would like a very high chance that it gets aggregated with other transactions to somehow indicate that on their transaction to like lower the possibility that it gets fluffed? Or for example, guarantee that it never gets fluffed until it gets aggregated?
Okay, this is a great question. So at the beginning, we thought about using some kind of kernel lock, like lock 8, to do that. Instead of doing like this whole process, we just like locking the transaction basically until a certain point, and you can aggregate the transaction with that. But it didn't work well. And right now, like you can modify yourself your parameters in your nodes. But the thing is, like if somebody else sends you a stem transaction, and if your patience timer, so like the time you want to aggregate transaction to have really high, let's say, a limit here, and if you modify this to like 10 minutes instead of 2, like, I don't know, like the node before will say, okay, like this guy is retaining my transaction, so I'm going to fluff it. So it's like it will require like the whole network to change parameters, but right now like the parameters are fairly good.
Thanks. Maybe I misunderstand, but it seems like in order for two transactions to be aggregated, it would need to be the case that their stem paths intersect prior to either one being fluffed.
Yeah.
Isn't that likelihood like vanishingly small if they're both choosing random nodes in a network to relay to?
So it's quite small. See? So we are, yeah, like one of the questions, like we need to quantify this, like what I talked about at the end. But we believe it should happen when there is a high amount of transaction on the network.
I wanted to know if there are de-anonymization attacks on the Dandelion protocol.
You mean delimitation of transaction?
No, are there ways known ways to de-anonymize the transactions on Dandelion?
The sender, okay.
Weak points.
So Dandelion was like published 2 years ago, and there was like a paper, and like there was a lot of discussion. So I believe not, and I think it's pretty safe right now. But I don't know, like as far as I know, it's safe.
Because it came to my mind that there is also another approach possible, which is to use some kind of onion routing for the transaction. That would be another way to anonymize the sender from the network.
Okay. Yeah. See.
Right.
Hey, in practice, what would be like the added latency for the transactions? Like you said, I guess a hop would measure its waiting period in minutes. Wouldn't it be possible to have it like waiting for milliseconds and then having the total latency just a few seconds?
Yeah. So this is like a trade-off. So the longer you wait, the more likely your transaction can be aggregated with other people's transaction. So that's why we introduced like the concept of patience. If you do it like right away, there is really little chance that your transaction can meet someone else's transaction.
Is it possible to fluff a transaction straight away?
Yeah.
As a node.
Yeah.
I saw some of the benefits of the whole protocol is that you can, if you have an output created and destroyed in the same block, you can just like emit it. The longer you delay that, obviously, the less chance that you have that omission, right? Of if somebody wants to continue sending on an output. So I did some testing on Bitcoin, and around 14% of outputs are created and destroyed in the same block, and 21% within 2 blocks. But that's on a 10-minute block time. If you have a 1-minute block time, how much effect do you think you're going to have if you have an additional delay with the Dandelion?
Okay, so I don't think Dandelion changed anything about that. So it's just like the Mimble technology behind. Like it doesn't change anything. Like if you want to sync a new node, people always compact their chain. When I mean compaction, I mean like they will do. Just going back. Yeah. So it's like an automatic process. Like nodes will do this anyway all the time. So they will like compact their chain. So if there is Dandelion or not, it doesn't change anything. Okay.
Maybe I missed some point. More a basic question. What again is the economic incentivation for the router to wait long?
So there is no economic incentivation. Like it's basically it's like some kind of value in the code, and like people, it's like just like a way to anonymize transaction.
But who enforces the period?
No one. So you can choose to change your patience time manually, or to change your probability.
So then again, what is the advantage to wait longer? The economic advantage. Why should
for you or for your node? For your transaction or for your node?
For this router.
I don't understand. Like, is it for your transaction or for your node? Because if for your transaction, it's really good for you because you can hide the originator of the transaction and you can do some aggregation. And if it's for your node, so basically, it doesn't change anything for you. It's like you're not basically routing transaction same way as before.
Do we have right now Dandelion implementation in some production coin?
So I don't know. I think right now like they are working on it on Bitcoin, and it should be implemented. So if you look at the BAB, because Bitcoin has some kind of like different way to broadcast transaction too. Yeah, I don't know.
A quick one, thank you. Has there been any effort to formalize the benefits of this algorithm, or do some formal proof of the gain, the privacy gain?
Yeah, so like the privacy gain, like there was like two papers, like Dandelion and Dandelion ++, and like the aggregation gain. So we like this will need like us to write paper basically.
Any more questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.